President Barack Obama. The night the raid was announced, justice has been done. On every anniversary, the bell tolls. The names are read. Hearts break and hold. Two pillars of light rise into the night, not to glorify the darkness that tried to swallow them, but to illuminate the lives that outshone it. We remember because memory is a promise. We rebuild because hope is a practice. We stand because falling is not our final word. And though a man who chose terror once carved his name into history, it is the names of the lost and the love that remains that define us. He cloaked political grievances in religious language, drawing fierce criticism from Muslim scholars who deemed his rulings illegitimate. He lionized violence as virtue, an ideology that many imams and intellectuals rejected as a corruption of faith. When asked in 1998 why civilians were targeted, he framed all Americans as complicit, an assertion widely condemned as morally bankrupt. In contrast, survivors, first responders, and families offered the world a different language. Courage in smoke, kindness in chaos, unity in the unthinkable. The impact of bin Laden's choices did not end with his death. It stretched across borders and bedrooms, wars that claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. Families in New York and Kabul, in Kandahar and Karachi, living with empty chairs and quiet rooms, security lines and surveillance laws, a tide of Islamophobia hurting millions of Muslims who condemned his violence, a generation coming of age beneath the shadow of a date. His legacy is not glory. It is grief, not greatness, but a caution that ideas can be weaponized, that certainty without empathy kills, that a myth built on murder devours its makers and the innocent alike. May 2011, Abbottabad, Pakistan. Operation Neptune Spear. In the quiet of night, U.S. Navy SEALs descended on a high-walled compound where a tall figure moved through corridors of secrecy. Minutes later, a decade-long manhunt ended. Osama bin Laden was killed. In the United States, relief washed through vigils and living rooms. Some wept, some prayed, some simply exhaled. 10 years of fear and grief meeting a moment of finality. President Obama addressed the nation. Justice has been done. Around the world, reactions mixed. Mourning for those lost to terrorism. Anxiety about what comes next. Debates about law, sovereignty, and the cost of an endless war. What followed became the defining theater of a generation. The U.S.-led war in Afghanistan to dismantle al-Qaeda and topple the Taliban regime that harbored it. A long hunt across mountains and borders, intelligence networks knitting names, faces, and safe houses into a net that sometimes frayed and sometimes held. Inside the movement, ideological rifts simmered. The near enemy versus the far enemy. Global jihad versus local insurgency. Public propaganda versus clandestine cells. Critics within the broader Muslim world condemned his claims to religious legitimacy. Scholars rejected the murder of civilians as un-Islamic. Yet the myth he engineered, a myth of defiance through mass murder, galvanized copycats and splinters, sowing chaos from North Africa to South Asia. August 7th, 1998. U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania are bombed. 224 killed, thousands injured. October 12th, 2000. USS Cole bombed in Yemen, 17 sailors dead. A signature emerges. Coordinated, spectacular violence designed to be seen, to be replayed, to be remembered. Then, September 11th, 2001, 4 planes hijacked. The Twin Towers struck. The Pentagon aflame. A field in Pennsylvania where passengers fought back. Nearly 3,000 souls lost. In the ashes and sirens, a nation's innocence torn, and a global order changed. In 1996, bin Laden issued a declaration of war against the Americans occupying the land of the 2 holy places. 2 years later, in 1998, he and allied militants formed the World Islamic Front, calling for attacks on Americans. These were not veiled words. They were open threats, blueprints of bloodshed. Quote, contextualized, critical. In a 1998 interview, he justified violence by blaming U.S. policy, saying, "We do not differentiate between those dressed in military uniforms and civilians. They are all targets." These words, condemned globally, including by many Muslim scholars, signaled an escalation that would claim thousands of innocent lives. In the Afghan War, he did not begin as a commander of men, but as a builder of means, money, machinery, roads to move men and weapons. With Abdullah Azzam, he helped create logistical pipelines for foreign fighters. The struggle against the Soviets fed a narrative of destiny. Victory in 1989 hardened certainty. Faith and force fused. But after the war, his footing faltered. Back in Saudi Arabia, he clashed with his homeland's rulers, condemning foreign troops on Saudi soil during the Gulf War. In 1994, he lost his Saudi citizenship. Assets were frozen. He moved, first to Sudan, then expelled again in 1996 under international pressure. Landing in Taliban-ruled Afghanistan. Exile sharpened anger. Distance deepened dogma. He was born in 1957 in Riyadh and raised in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Osama bin Mohammed bin Awad bin Laden, son of a construction magnate whose company helped build his kingdom's future. One of dozens of children, he grew up at the intersection of privilege and piety, private schools, conservative teachings, a young man quiet in demeanor, intense in belief. At King Abdulaziz University, he encountered currents that would shape him. Pan-Islamic activism, fiery sermons, and the storm from afar, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. He met ideas and ideologues who framed the world as a battlefield of belief. A clear blue Tuesday, a skyline carved into memory. The moment the ordinary broke, one name would echo from radios and living rooms, from classrooms and kitchens. Osama bin Laden. This is not a tribute. This is a reckoning. A story not of inspiration, but of the cost of radicalization, of how one man's choices shook the world and how millions carried the weight. Transition from a bright New York morning to a dim corridor in Jeddah.